Yeah, so I obviously grew up on a farm and grew up in a rugby house. That's very South African like. When the Springboks play or when the Blue Bulls play, so the Blue Bulls is based in Pretoria. When you're from up north, that's kind of the team that you support. So, every weekend when rugby, the TV is on, you watch the rugby, and um, she picked up a knee injury, and it was like still early on in the game. I think it was like 2 minutes into the game, and then the coach put me onto the pitch, and yeah, I just remember we played a scrum from the right hand side, and everything just worked out perfectly. And that's basically, where I scored my first try on the World Series. With my first cap as well. In the Springbok jersey, it was a lot of heartache. When the team qualified and we were just denied to go to the Olympics game, and last year when we qualified again and we were actually told you're going to the Olympics. It's really difficult to describe it, but it brings so much joy to know that finally, that childhood dream comes true.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are now tuned in to the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time. Welcome to the Rugby Swag Show. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rugby Swag. My name is GiftTime and Baylor, and of course, this is a show where we get to tell you the stories that you don't lose in ignorance through news and interviews. We got a great story for you today, but before we get started on that, I need you to please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Please go ahead and like and drop a comment as well, because we love the engagement, and so does YouTube. If you're catching us only on audio, that is not a problem, because I absolutely love it. Please go ahead and subscribe to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, on any major streaming platform for podcast and audio. Like, we really want to get it out there, iHeartRadio and all the works. Like, we absolutely appreciate it. We're trying to push the algorithm. We're trying to be able to get into a position where we can be seen by more people, that we can be appreciated, but more importantly, that these stories don't get lost because they just were not heard. That's not what we want to do. All right. And I really appreciate everybody, who is listening, who takes it in, who talks, who critiques, good or bad, up or down. I fully appreciate it. So thank you so much. And lastly, of course, you can connect with us on social media, Instagram at Rugby Swag Show, baby. On Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitch when we're live. It is at GiftTime with two T's Rugby. GIFTTIME Rugby. Y'all, and on X, whenever we get back, it will be at GiftTime Rugby or at GiftEgbelu, GIFTEGBELU. So we got some great ones going on for you today. I just got to say, this was a really, really great interview. One, because I really appreciate what this player has been doing. We got Nadine Roos of South Africa Women's Rugby. If you guys didn't get a chance to catch them at the WXV tournament, at this point it'll be the week prior. They got another game coming up. After this is going to be posted, they played Japan. Nice little revenge match from the Olympics. Got the win back against Japan on a great play by Nadine. She's a beast. She's an absolute beast, but she is so humble off the field. And it's so dope. Great story. When I'm telling you, this is a person who has earned everything that she has got, and she has put everything in there and put it in belief, in grace, in the love of what she does, in the passion for what she does. And we were able to really talk about this in this interview. A great conversation overall. And also, please excuse me if there's one part where we're talking about athletics. I really still don't know what that is. I think it's track. but I don't think I was communicating well. That I didn't understand what it meant because different communication styles for different countries, of course. So for those who are used to Commonwealth lingo, if you can drop me a comment to let me know what that fully means, I truly would appreciate it. But that being said, I want you guys to truly enjoy this, take this all in. Man, I'm so excited about the interviews we got. We got some great stuff coming through. And I'm so happy for it. So in the meantime, I'm not going to hold it back. We, of course, got to talk to the people who help support us, man. Coming to our guys from Health Enhanced Foods, Specialty Flour Shop. But, please take a look at that. Take it in to help support the show, but really get this interview in and share it with your friends and family if you get a chance to. This is Nadine Roos, South Africa, women's rugby. Check it out.
There's wheat flour that you can eat. My name is GiftTime in Baylor. I'm here with Health Enhanced Foods. And I want to tell you about one of our best and most beloved products, our sweet white wheat baking mix. Now, this is the baking mix for those who are not really looking for something that's gluten-free, but they are looking for something that they can eat that is going to still be healthy and is not going to be dangerous. White flour is typically a very processed, incredibly bleached flour, and it's not good for you. It's incredibly cheap for a reason. Our sweet white wheat bread mix is whole grain, dairy-free, high in dietary fiber, free of additives, and is absolutely unprocessed and unrefined. With our sweet white wheat bread mix, you can feel like you're getting all the same rewards that you would get from poor white bread, but with all the nutritional value. You're able to still make your bread loaves or your cakes, your flat bread or your cookies, but you don't have to feel like you are going to be robbing yourself of good carbohydrates. You can get the sweet white wheat bread mix from healthenhancedfoods.com. Absolutely go impress your friends and family with the greatest bread while not making them feel like they have to be gluten-free at the same time. No dangers, full body pleasures. Go ahead and get yours today. Let's go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Rugby Swag. We got another honorably special guest for you today, coming straight out of South Africa. She's one of the leading scorers for South Africa women's sevens. She is a major player for South Africa 15s. She's got 11 caps under as a 15. She's been killing it as an Olympian because she just made the first Olympian for South Africa in 2024. Doing it big. I'm calling onto the stage the Nadine Roos. Nadine, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, on your show. It's a really honor and privilege, to be here and, just being a guest on your show. That's really a massive honor.
Oh, man. No, I appreciate it. You're too kind. I love your words. Well, look, I want to say, I always like to say kind of the first time to be able to see people. And I think the first time I had the chance to witness you, even though I know you've been playing since 2016, but it was, I think, 2021 in the HSBC sevens that I got a chance to be able to see you and the South Africa team play. And it kind of was jarring because I think at that time it was like the Springbok women were starting to grow, but all of a sudden you saw this jump and you started seeing it come together. And 2022 came, 2023 WXV, and you started seeing like, okay, you guys are winning. You beat my Nigerian women in the Africa Cup. And so I was like, okay, they got this. And then I see you're juking through people, breaking through town. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? So that's my way of being like, kudos. All right. Kudos for setting up another set of program and just being awesome on the pitch while out there.
Yeah, no, it's been a long journey, especially for the women's sevens program in South Africa. They were a core team, I think, on the 2014 and 2015 series. And then when I started making my debut with the national team, the Springbok Women's Sevens team, it was in 2016. And, then I got a glimpse of the World Series in Dubai in December. And like I was like, this is where I want to play, this is the biggest stage that you can play at. um and I want to play against the top names that you get, like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, or USA was also there. We actually had a good game, against USA in 2016 in Dubai on the World Series. And you're like, there's some proper names in the game as well, Portia Woodman, Taylor Nathan Wong back then. She's now King.
Yeah.
Like all those players, like they're very good players. And you want to compete against them because at the end of the day, they make you come back home, work harder, lift your own standard, because you want to prove that you can compete against those teams. And then yeah, like obviously, when COVID came, in 2021, the sevens program got cut. And then we had some of us went to the 15s, and that's where I got my opportunity to go to a 15s World Cup, where I was selected for that. And yeah, like I think with that as well, some doors opened for me when 2023, I went to Japan for a 6-month stint. Got a contract at Nagato Blue Angels. I think that's also just, I learned more about myself and, excelled my rugby even more. And yeah, like even in those years, the team, was the night of going to the Olympics, qualifying through the African Cup, that's qualifying through your continent. Back 2015, for the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. And then we also, qualified for the Tokyo Olympic Games. And yeah, we just were denied by, Saskok to send us to the Olympics because we weren't seen as a competitive team. But yeah, like, we still, stuck to it. And when the program restarted, as a group we came together and realized, like, listen, we need to get back onto the World Series. And we had that opportunity last year, to qualify through the Challenger Series that was in Stellenbosch. And it was actually a good year for the sevens rugby because at the African Cup we also qualified, to go to the Olympics. And third time lucky, they say. And we got the opportunity to go to the Olympics and showcase our talent and show what South Africa is made of.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's facts. Like, you know, like I said, for me, I didn't, and I forgot about the program getting cut in 2021, but I did remember seeing you guys play in 2021. But like or 2020, maybe 2020. My time variance always sucks a little bit. But the point is, I remember being able to see it, and like I said, it did feel like there was a growth that was already happening. And then 2020, I guess maybe it is 2023, you guys pop back. 2022, 2023, guys popped out, and it felt like, okay, this South Africa team, they came with a different mindset. Like there is a different commitment that goes into it. And I could see legitimate improvements where it went from a team that played hard on the field, but it, was difficult scoring, to a team that legitimately was pushing teams to their edge for a great majority of the game, where you're like, okay, you're just a couple years, you're just like 1 or 2 years of just experience just to turn it all over and really make an impact as contenders, as opposed to just playing. You're contending for something. So, I think that's been, as a American of African descent, something that's been legit to be able to watch, especially as we also look for the growth within the continent itself. But before we continue on to that subject, because this is that's a whole can of worms that I look forward to opening up. I always like to say, you know, every superhero has their story. And madam, you are a superhero in this story. And every superhero has an origin story. So I have to ask you, how did you, Nadine, get started with rugby?
Yeah, so I obviously grew up on a farm and grew up in a rugby house. That's very South African like. When the Springboks play or when the Blue Bulls play, so the Blue Bulls is based in Pretoria. When you're from up north, that's kind of the team that you support. So, every weekend when it's rugby, the TV is on, you watch the rugby, and you know, growing up on a farm, it gives you the sport lifestyle as well. You play outside, you do any kind of sports, that you can do. And I was privileged enough to grow up like that. And then when I went to the university, I actually went there for athletics, but then the athletics didn't work out for me like I was planned for it to work out. And then, yeah, rugby crossed my path. Went to a training session the one evening, and I really enjoy it. And then a month later, yeah, I was selected in the university team to go to France to go and play in the Stanislas and Central Sevens. So yeah, and then like I just stuck to rugby. I actually didn't knew there was women's rugby in South Africa. When I was in primary school and high school, I only started knowing about it. When I got to varsity, and yeah, that's basically how I started. And at the end of the year, I got scouted by the national team's coach, and that's how I, find my way into the national setup. And since ever then, I've just been part of the national setup.
Yo, I love that, and there's I want to kind of delve a little bit in because you having researched your story and you've talked about it a lot. So this is my audience, so they don't know it as they might not know it, but you have a really really great coming up story, and shout out to your family, your grandmother on this one. And before we get into the
Yeah.
rugby house, if you don't mind, being able to explain just a little bit of your upbringing and how you ended up being a part of this rugby household on the
Yeah,
farm.
so yeah, so basically, I've grown up with my grandmother. She raised me since a little baby. Yeah, so I was basically left like at the kindergarten school by my mother. Like my mother had other interests in life, misuse of, alcohol, drugs, and men. Which was her decision that she made. And then her sister wanted, to give me away. But then my grand just said, over her dead body, she will give away her own blood. So she took me in and raised me. And yeah, I'm very thankful for her, for where I am today. I think if it wasn't, for her with the guidance, and privilege, of knowing our heavenly Father, then yeah, I really don't know where I would have been today. And yeah, so she lived in town, and then her friend, who stays on the farm, said to her, no, she must come and rent a place there on the farm. And that's how we moved to relocated to the farm, just outside of my hometown. And yeah, it was basically her friend's son, so her grandchild. Like, you like just playing with them, and always come and call me to play rugby, soccer, cricket. We always just played outside on the farm, kick the rugby ball, do whatever we could do on the farm.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's basically, how the story goes, and how I ended up with my grandmother, and how she raised me.
No, I love that, and again, shout out to Father God and your grandmother for it, because the destiny that it created clearly was called upon, to say the least.
Yeah,
So
they say when
no,
yeah,
continue,
they say
please.
obviously when one door closes, another one opens, and obviously that was God's plan, for me, closing the athletics door, and showed me another pathway through rugby, and yeah, just privileged for that.
No, I love that. Now, I do got to ask about the farm life, all right? Because this is where you go, like, country strong in a sense of way. So, living on the farm, was it a farm that you guys were doing like animals and taking care of animals, or is it a farm of like you guys had fields and cutting vegetation, or was it just like house on a lot of land and you just got a lot of land to be able to use?
Buckwheat is changing lives. My name is GiftTime. I'm here with Health Enhanced Foods, and I want to tell you about one of my favorite products on our shelves, Buckwheat Baking Mix. Buckwheat is a seed that is incredibly nutrient and protein dense. But what makes it even more important, that buckwheat baking mix is absolutely gluten-free. A lot of times whenever people have buckwheat mixes, they actually even hold wheat inside of it. So you know it's not fully gluten. And if you're a person that is celiac or diabetic, or you're just really trying to be health conscious, it's not something that you want to have to worry about. What makes our buckwheat baking mix even more important is that it is versatile. You can use it for pancakes, you can use it for waffles, you can use it for making loaves of bread, you can make it for cupcakes. But what helps even more is that it is allergen free, it is nut free, it is dairy free, that there is no additional additives in it. There's no leavening there, so that if you want to be able to raise your bread, you can put in the baking powder yourself and get it fluffy. If you don't, you absolutely do not have to. You get the bread that you love without the cost to your health. You can absolutely find buckwheat baking mix at healthenhancedfoods.com. Absolutely check it out. Get your nostalgia back. Get back to eating and loving the way that you are, and absolutely get back to the energy that you know that you can get without having to destroy yourself. I'm looking forward to seeing you get it. Let's go.
No, so the farming part and the house farm, if I can say it like that, was very separate.
Mhm.
So yeah, so the my grandmother's friend's son is the farmer. So yeah, the farms are like almost like 10, I think 5 to 10 kilometers apart from each other. So the farm that we stayed on, there was like animals like sheep, ostrich, and cows and stuff on the farm. And then he's farming with vegetables and yeah, like plant-based farming. So that farm was separate of the farm that we stayed on. So yeah, that's basically the explanation of how the farming worked.
I'm sorry, Nadine, you just casually kind of were just like, we had some cows, we had some animals, and we had ostriches. We're not gonna just go over the ostriches, but like that's a small thing. We had the biggest bird in mammal history right now, just around, just chill. Let me ask, is that where your speed came from? You guys were just racing out these ostriches from time to time and just playing games. You're like, all
Listen,
right, hey.
yeah.
No,
Let's
that's
be honest, I was chased by ostrich, and it really wasn't fun because I had to run for my life. Because if that thing kicks you, you will be definitely bleeding your way into a hospital. So,
understand. Look, I remember when I was in Nigeria, I ran from a turkey. All right, because I was scared of it jumping in my face. When you talk about running from an ostrich, no, you are a badass. I don't. You not only outran that ostrich, but you protected yourself. Nadine, there's nothing you can do wrong at this point. You are owed everything. That's dope.
growing up on a farm is it's just it's something you need to experience in your childhood, and I must say it's a good experience to grow up like that.
did you feel like being in that environment? Obviously, like it's take away the necessarily the farming, but like being in that environment, like did it allow you to be able to get a better determination on work ethic, or was it one of those situations where maybe give you more freedom? Like there's so many variations on how country living can or farm living can play out, but for you, like where do you what do you feel like it kind of helped lead you on?
Yeah, I think like growing up in that environment, like it actually allows you to be disciplined. That was also one thing. Like my grandmother never, had to tell me, okay, you need to do your homework now. Like I knew I had to do my homework first before I can even go outside and play, because that was just my responsibility. Um, but also it was also kind of, with boys growing up, it's always a competitive environment. But I also think, you're either born with competitiveness or you're not. I don't think it's really something that you can learn through your childhood life. And I think with
Yeah.
the boys, I was just always so competitive. Like I wanted to be faster than them. I wanted to be better than them. I wanted to step them and stuff like that. So I think growing up in that environment, it allowed I think the sports passion, that's actually inside of me to bloom basically.
Mhm.
Um, but I also think, holidays, it's not just sitting around at home and watching TV and stuff. Like I had the opportunity, to go, to the uncle's farm with his son. Had the opportunity to work on the farm, to learn how they do things there. And also grow up in that style of where you need to work hard, to be successful.
Mhm.
And I think that just being in that environment, it allowed you to be free, but it also allowed learning as a young child.
Yeah, I always know like the ability to be able to deconstruct a situation, especially as a kid, and being shown not necessarily the answers, but that pathway becomes so important. And it feels like when you're on a farm environment, because you have this do your job kind of mentality, it's a figure it out so that you can get it done, and then when you're able to do it, perfect it kind of situation. Would that be accurate?
Yes, I definitely think so. Yeah.
And I love that because and it makes sense as to why you were going to school as like athlete, because I assume, especially when it comes to sports, it's like what your position, or what the objective is that needs to be done, right? And it's like, all right, now I'm just trying to get from point A to point B. For you, obviously, you said the competition, you wanted to beat the boys. About like asserting the fact that you are a continued badass who runs away from ostriches and playing games with these kids here. Like when you would choose your sports, was it something that did you choose sports that felt natural to you, or were you just like, oh, they're doing it, I'm gonna do this one as well too?
No, I think like actually when you participate in sports in school, like my grandmother allowed me the freedom, to participate in everything. And I was basically a natural in all of the sporting codes. But obviously when I got to high school, because of finances and stuff, you have to choose specifically, and also because the school is very focused on academics. And in high school, you travel more to other provinces to go and compete in the sporting codes. So it almost allows you not to be so much in the classroom, and because it's such a academic focused school, it only allowed you to choose certain sporting codes. And yeah, like just in primary school, being able to try out any sport that I was allowed by by my grandmother, it allowed me that freedom to see what works for me, what am I really good at. And also in high school you can almost be like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. Because you still grow. Like in primary school you can't be very specific to one sports code, because in primary school you might be fast, between all the children, but when you get in high school you might lose that speed,
Right.
because you're still growing and developing, as a child. And for me, it obviously speed was in my favor, so athletics was also always part of it. I enjoyed netball more than hockey, so that was almost like your winter sport.
Hmm.
And then with the cricket as well, like in primary school, I played cricket, I enjoyed it. And in high school, there was a cricket team for the ladies, so that was also very enjoyable. So I also did that. And yeah, then I just did cross country for the fun of it, because I just wanted to stay fit.
Nadine, why are you a crazy person? Cross country for the what? No, no, I'm playing.
I
No, no. All
I
cross
I
country
think
people are
people
a little
think
crazy.
I'm a crazy person.
It's okay.
Yeah, so
Look, crazy
yeah,
people, crazy runs the world, but I'm gonna still call out crazy when cross country is insane. But that's legit though.
yeah.
That's legit. And
So yeah, I just did it to stay fit, and then obviously CrossFit also came over my path when I got to the age of 17 years old,
mhm,
which I must say was a good timing, for me to actually be exposed to weights and stuff. I think also the biggest thing in South Africa is, all these schoolboy kids get addicted to a gym, but they actually don't really know what they're doing, and your body is
right.
still growing, till you the age of 16 or 17 years old. So then I had the opportunity, to work with the CrossFit coach in my hometown, and then through him he kind of exposed me to CrossFit. And when I started the CrossFit, I really enjoyed it. And when I realized, what the sport is all about, and what you also can achieve in it, I was like very hooked, and I was like, this is what I also want to do. So yeah, and then obviously being part of a national team, it's kind of difficult to do two sporting codes that demand so much from you.
Right.
But yeah, that's basically the story of, how the pathway went for me to choose specific sports. Um, I just basically tried out everything and just realized I'm natural in everything. Um, but some sports just got me more excited than others. So I just stick around the things that I enjoyed more of doing.
And I think that I mean that makes sense. And on top of that, like you can see like the various ways that your sporting experiences play into your rugby as well. Like the various concepts go into it, and it makes the format of your play makes so much more sense. I do need to ask this because I've seen this one come. I know you talked about CrossFit, but I got to ask about netball because there is something about netball that seems to produce like amazing stuff. Portia netball. I think Lucy Mulhall, or I forgot what her new name is. Her name is
Yes.
now. Thank you. A netball. I've seen so much netball, and in the States, obviously because we got basketball, like netball
Mm.
doesn't exist in a major or barely minor format. So, what is it about netball that seems to translate so well into rugby? Because wildness, the consistency on this one.
I think obviously netball, the only thing that you can't do is you can't move when you catch the ball.
Mm,
You also have to, you have to move yourself into space. You need to identify someone into space. It's also, it's 4 quarters of 15 minutes, so it's quite longer than a rugby game, but it also depends on the position you play. If you center, you move around the whole court, um, besides the goal area. So I think if you take rugby and netball, that identifying of space, Catching and passing a ball. It's obviously just a round ball. The rugby ball is a oval ball.
Right.
So it's just a different type of skill that you need to learn how to pass a ball properly. Um, but I think the same thing about it is that identifying of the space, passing the ball to someone that's into space. Also, the defending of a player. That peripheral vision that needs to be good. The same in rugby, you need to have good peripheral vision, to protect yourself as an attacker, but also that identifying of when someone else is in space, or identifying the space for yourself. And the hand-eye coordination, basically, catching and passing a ball. I think those characteristics of netball and rugby correlates to each other. Um, the only thing that you need to learn in rugby is how to tackle someone, and the safety of tackling and stuff. But that's an easy thing to learn. And I believe netball these days is as crazy as rugby, because when you watch netball, there's always someone on the ground somewhere. How contact became so much in netball. So yeah, I think those are the key components of netball and rugby that really correlates to each other.
I feel that. That makes sense. That really does make sense. Because hey, look, man, you guys have been producing like crazy. So I need to understand where these things come together. But
Yeah.
I love this. So you talk about, in high school, obviously you've restricted the amount of sports that you play, and it seems like as you get older and you get into the next level, like they keep restricting you down into the games that you can play. So you went to university as an athlete, correct? What does that mean exactly? Because again, in terms of South Africa versus here, what does going
Yeah,
in as
so
an athlete?
it's almost just like getting a scholarship for athletics specific.
Mm-hmm.
So it means like you need to participate for the university in athletics. It will almost be the same as, I think, if you take NFL, for example, or any sporting codes in the US. If there's a scholarship for, if they scout a good player in school, and the university really wants that player to represent the varsity, then they will offer you a scholarship. So basically, like it's a bursary. So they pay you your studies, but paying your study, so it allows you to study at the university, but you need to compete in sports for them.
But in that situation, which makes sense, that part does. Whenever you go the terminology as athlete, does that mean was there a specific? Was it CrossFit that you went in as an athlete, or was it like they're just like you're an athlete? We have sports. If you can fit in this sport, we want you available to be able to play in this kind of sport, or was it sport specific?
Yeah, no, it was sports specific for athletics itself. Yeah, CrossFit is not really that. It wasn't that big in South Africa back then, so yeah, I don't even think the universities know what CrossFit
Yeah.
really is. But yeah, like it was specific for athletics, and then the rugby just crossed my path. So I had to then move to an academic. I actually got an academic and a sporting scholarship. So then when I moved from athletics to rugby, because I couldn't compete for the athletics anymore,
Yeah.
then the next year I got a rugby bursary. That also helped with paying my studies, but I also had an academic bursary that paid my studies, yeah. So it
No.
actually helped a lot. Yeah.
That's legit. Man, that work ethic. I'm losing my language. Work ethic it's so legit. Like it's
Yeah.
impressive. So you're entering in, and at this point is whenever you're really fully playing rugby. For you though, obviously you kind of made the mention that one of the parts that you really just needed to work on was the tackling, or learning how to tackle the pass, hand-eye coordination. was already pretty well established for you. What was that moment for you where you were just like, oh, this is the sport that I'm a stick to? Like, this is the one that, oh, you guys have now earned the honor of me.
Yeah, I think obviously growing up with rugby, also playing with the boys on the farm, um, that skill was already implemented or
Right.
instilled in me as a person. And then when I just went to the practice at the university, I enjoyed it. And when I was selected, to be in a team that toured overseas, I was like, okay, this can get really excited. And I think when sevens became an Olympic sport, I was like, okay, this is even more exciting because that was always part of my dream, is to become an Olympian or represent my country on the biggest stage. And it was never planned to be rugby. It was just to represent my country in any sporting code, that I'm capable of doing, because it's just a massive honor, to do it. And at the end of the day, it ended up being rugby.
Ah, nice. Let me ask you this question. Which one was a better first? First time that you broke an ankle of one of the boys when you were younger, or the first time scoring at the international stage in rugby?
I never broke my ankle when I was younger, so it's the
No, no, no.
second one.
What I mean by break an ankle is whenever you like juke a person out and then you make
Oh,
them
okay.
fall over. So sorry, yeah, it's the term we use. Like
You
when they do it, like one of the boys, you stepped them and then they went the other way, you went the other and burst out, or the first time scoring on the international stage.
Yo, that's a very difficult one because actually both was really good when it happened that stepped the boy. But I must say, scoring your first try on the international stage, it's quite special. And I will definitely remember my first try that I, scored in the Springbok jersey. And that was actually against USA when we played them in Dubai in 2016 on the World Series, and we actually beat USA in that game. So I'll always remember that game.
Yo, okay. Break it down, like if you can, like because we're definitely going to look this one up and be able to get that as well. But the key, like for you, like how do you remember it whenever you sometimes visit? Because those are core memories, right? Like how was it in that moment whenever it was? I guess how did it play out for you? Maybe that's the best way of asking.
So I think the whole 2016 season where we were more playing invitational tournaments because we weren't a core team on the World Series.
Mhm.
I always played off the bench because I was such a young player in the system. I think that's obviously that was the plan of the coach, to kind of let me gain my experience through that and just not throw me into the deep end.
Right.
And it was when I started out playing on wing for the Sevens ladies. And when we got to Dubai, I remember, we played Australia first. It wasn't a great game for us. And our second pool game was against USA. And I remember the wing that started in that game, um, she picked up a knee injury. And it was like still early on in the game. I think it was like 2 minutes into the game. And then the coach put me onto the pitch. And yeah, I just remember we played a scrum from the right hand side, and everything just worked out perfectly. And that's basically where I scored my first try on the World Series. With my first cap as well, in the Springbok jersey
That-
on the World Series. So yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. I want to ask about the Springbok program, um, because there's such a legendariness now, especially after this fourth Rugby World Cup that the men got, and now South Africa is very happy, very happy. But the mythos I think of Springbok's program is maybe at its highest that it's ever been. You know, for you guys, looking from the inside out, one, how much of the Springbok program works together with the men and the women under an umbrella? I don't mean by like they have the same name, but like having sharing resources in 2016 versus what has been happening maybe as of late. Have you guys seen an improvement in the balance on how you guys are being um, trained and cared for?
Don't you love a great ketogenic family? My name is Gifte Belu. I'm here with Health Enhanced Food. I wanted to talk to you about one of our top baking mixes, and that is our ketogenic baking mixes. We got our ketogenic seed baking mix, our ketogenic almond baking mix, and of course, our ketogenic coconut baking mix. Now, what is so important about it being ketogenic? Now, for those who don't know, ketogenic means that it is utilizing low carbs to be able to eat from. The point of it is so that your body will naturally activate burning from your fat and be able to sustain off your proteins rather than feeding your body carbohydrates and your body simply burning that and you just don't lose weight. And so whenever you're doing that process, it's incredibly difficult. And of course, you're always going to have a craving for wanting to eat the breads and the carbs that you typically would have. With our keto baking mixes, you can have the pancakes, the waffles, the cookies, the cakes, the pizza crust that you absolutely desire without sacrificing the work, your diet, and obviously the results that you're trying to get. All our ketogenic baking mixes are gluten-free, grain-free, plant-based, and absolutely loaded with natural vitamins and minerals. We want to make sure that they are low net carb, they have no added sugar, they are protein rich, they have good healthy fats, but even more importantly, they have a low glycemic level. So for those who are diabetic and you're also still trying to find something, we have the baking mixes that are for you. And I'm sure you're wondering, why make 3 versions of them if they all are basically doing the same thing? Well, we wanted to make sure, as always, that we are trying to specialize to your dietary need. So with our ketogenic coconut, we wanted to give you a version that allows you to have a sweeter bread without sacrificing your diet. But it provides you things that you can make with your cakes, you can make your cookies, but you can be able to not have to lose your mind trying to find things that can satiate the taste without ruining your diet. With our ketogenic almond baking mix, that is one that has probably the highest protein content. It allows you to be able to control your blood sugar levels, reduce your blood pressure, lower cholesterol levels, and of course, it goes to promoting weight loss and being able to control the hunger. And for our ketogenic seed, this is for those who have a nut allergy and they can't take anything like the almonds. So we want to give them still the same thing. You can still make your bread, you can still make your pizza crust, you can still make your cakes and your buns and your muffins, but you don't have to worry about having an allergic reaction. You definitely can go check out the ketogenic line of products at healthenhancedfoods.com. Go ahead, keep up with your diet, get the foods that are necessary to keep you going, and let's get the results that you absolutely deserve. Let's go.
So the men and the women are basically split. So the Springbok men's the 15 side, like they pretty much on their own. The sevens men and women are based at the same location where we train, but we never train together. So, and with the restart of the sevens in 2022 with the 15s, they basically merged the program. So it's now actually seen as a women's system within South Africa, but obviously still Springbok Women's 15s team and the Springbok Women's Sevens team. And like the players that, you know, was part of when the sevens program got cut in 2021, some of the sevens players moved over to the 15s. those players are basically on a deal contract. So if they are needed at the 15s, they will go to the 15s, like what happened now after the Olympics. We like the camp started for preparation for the test matches upcoming and the WXV that needs to take place. So then you fall into the 15th training camp with your compulsory rest, obviously, after the Olympics. And yeah, basically the women's program and the men's program are separately. It all of it runs through SA Rugby, but we have
Mhm.
different management, different coaching styles, game plans is very different to
Right.
each other because it's dependent on how the coach wants to play and wants to perform. Um, so yeah.
I there's one component that I've found, and you kind of mentioned it already about the shift over from sevens over going over to 15s. Like, all right, I always talk about how 2017 Rugby World Cup is probably easily the women's rugby is probably easily my favorite Rugby World Cup of all time. It's easily because it was like this coalition where you have this like Avenger style 15 team. You had the speed and the amazing players from sevens matched up with the 15s forwards and people kind of putting together the two sides into this incredible action, and the play was just fantastic. But it's something that doesn't happen often on the men's side. For you, as you are one who jumps between both programs, how is that toll on your body? And do you feel like it is advantageous to be able to do both of those, or do you feel like they should be designated exclusive? Sevens people should preferably be with do sevens and focus on sevens solely, and 15 should solely focus on 15s. And really, just from your perspective, how it experiences from you for you.
Yeah, I think if you take, for example, the Springbok men's 15 side and the 7 side, the only time that you really saw some of the 15s players that came over to the sevens was before Olympics or a World Cup, uh,
Right.
because they want to be part of a pinnacle of sports like the Olympics. But then you have a player like Cheslin Corby is a really good example of a player who started out with sevens, but then went over to 15s. I think obviously the 15s just pay so much better, even for the men's sevens
Mhm.
players. So that's why they would change the in sporting code to go to 15s is just the payments is so much better. But I think the shortcoming of rugby, women's rugby in South Africa is that we don't have enough numbers, to be able to compete on the international stage. So the players that's actually involved at the 15s, that sevens players, like the sevens program still needs them. Um, you know, to be competitive on a World Series stage, to be competitive at the Olympics or at the World Cup. It's just those experienced players that you need to be able to guide, the inexperienced players. So I think it's still going to take some time for the women's game in South Africa to be separate from one another, to say, okay, only you can only play sevens and you can only play 15s. But at this moment, you can see that the sevens players makes a big difference in the 15 system,
Yeah.
just because of your one-on-one skill, your fitness levels.
Right.
It's quite high, and they always say it's difficult for a 15th player to come to sevens, just because of the demand of the sevens game.
Mm.
And but it's easier for a sevens player to go into 15s. That adaptability, um, you know, takes so much quicker and stuff. So at the moment, like I said, with the women's game, it's quite difficult. We don't have enough numbers. We're still in a developing stage in South Africa where we need to develop players, to be professional, to be disciplined. Yeah, and like professionalism, it's just, to be able to compete, on the world stage, and on that international level. The national level just needs to um, get so much, more exposure, playing in big stadiums with crowds. And that's one thing that we also, short of, is it's the support in women's rugby in South Africa. That's a challenge that we still face, because we don't get a lot of, I mean, if you've watched the Springbok men's game, against the All Blacks this Saturday, I mean,
Right.
the stadium was packed out. We still
75,000
struggling.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still struggling to get that type of numbers in South Africa, just because the lack of knowledge of the women's game in South
Mhm.
Africa just recently started growing. Um, and I think, obviously, like, you need to create a winning culture also for, for people to come and watch. I mean,
Right.
the men's done really well for themselves, um, especially under Rassie's coaching. 2019 they won the World Cup, and last year they also won the World Cup. So, they've been doing well, and that's why people wants to come and watch them, because they're winning. And we still almost need to create that winning culture. And, at the Olympics we got the opportunity to play in front of a stadium, packed out stadium, 66,000 spectators. And I must say, like, for me, that was a record as a player, playing in front of such a big crowd. And almost that's where we want the South Africans, to also come out in the numbers, and support the women's game. Like, those are all things that still needs to happen to actually be a separate system, 15s and sevens. um, because it actually, it takes a lot out of your body, like, to think about it. Play the whole World Series, from December, end of November, December, start of December till May, had a brief period of rest before you start with the camp for the Olympics. That's just another add-on, tournament for the year. Then you have 3 weeks off, but you can't complete rest, because then, you're going to 15s. And then, even if you look for next year, like, now, after the WXV, some of our sevens players will go back into the sevens program, to start preparing for the African Cup. To be one of the top two teams, in Africa, to qualify for the Challenger Series, because we
Mhm.
got knocked off, the World Series in Madrid, because we lost the one crucial game. Um, so you hopping between the two codes. So, like, how are you going to race? Because end of October they plan to play the African Cup. WXV, ends at the start of October, that second week of October. So, do you rest for a week? Like, but that's obviously, that's where
Yeah.
your medical team comes in, and your strength and conditioning team comes in, because they do that planning, for how to manage players, that hops between the two codes. But yeah, it actually, I think, in a way, it's a big advantage for a player, because you play rugby, and the only way you learn is by playing rugby,
Right.
and played on an international level. But the disadvantage is that your minutes just adds up. So then you're gonna get to a point where they say, "Listen, yeah, you need to take this amount of time off for you to actually be allowed to play again," because, that's where the Players Association, came in as well. I saw it with the men, what they did, with the URC, where they said they need a compulsory rest period because of the minutes you play. So they actually track the minutes you play. But yeah, like, obviously, for injuries and niggles, um, playing so much, and, training so much as well, that's the disadvantage it adds to the athletes. Um, so, so yeah.
No, I that is So much. It's one complaint that I had with top 14 when I would watch their schedule. It just was like, how are you? You're basically going 50 weeks of playing rugby, which
Yeah.
is just a complete beatdown, no matter how you play it. But I think even more importantly is the mental health component of it. Like, how do you find ways to be able to keep it restricted together? Because, like, to go from the Olympics, like easily the biggest, in my opinion, sevens event that exists now, the biggest sevens event on the biggest stage of the biggest crowd ever, and that clearly the impact has a huge result to WXV that is aiming to be, if obviously maybe the second or third largest, but it is the one that impacts what's going on with the largest event, the Rugby World Cup in and of
Yeah.
itself. So for you, how is it that what do you do to make sure that even if you're not maybe necessarily having the opportunity to fully physically rest, but mentally you're able to keep everything in line, because if that goes, everything else kind of tends to follow along with it.
Yeah, I think obviously mentally for me, when I got back home, I was like, I'm not going to touch my rugby boots. I'm not going to touch a rugby ball. I'm not even going to look at the footage. You know, as soon as I set foot in South Africa, that's like, when there's still time where I say, okay, this is the last
Mhm.
day that I think of rugby or I do rugby, then I really do it. So, and I think also that's where the CrossFit comes in handy. And it sounds stupid because why would you go to CrossFit if you can take a break? Like I believe, or that's just how my body works and it functions. I can't complete rest because it's almost
Right.
like my body just goes into a shutdown mode. So I will still do movements and train just for that blood flow, but more for the enjoyment of it.
Nice.
And for me to mentally just take a break from rugby is I won't think anything about rugby. I won't even try to touch my boots, or go to a rugby field or touch a rugby ball. And I would try to get to the people that you can't really get to when you're in a season. And also, when you go to CrossFit, that's a different community than your rugby community. It's still a sporting community, but some of those people, they just, daily people
Yeah.
that works and stuff, and they just train for fun. So you get time to chat to those people, and obviously they ask about the Olympics, and you tell them how the Olympics was, and that's the basically the only time that you think about rugby is when you tell that. Um, yeah, and just be able to, it's almost like a switch that you put on and off,
Yeah.
for rugby. It's knowing when to put that switch back on again and knowing when to switch it off when it's needed to switch off. And even now as well, while we're in camp, like if there's a weekend off, then there's a certain time where I'm like, okay, I'm done, watching our training. I'm done watching videos, even if it's just for one day. Um, or even when, we have an off day in the week, I would say, okay, for 5 hours or 6 hours of the day, I'm not going to watch any videos because that's the time where I actually shut down from rugby. When where you get to enjoy a bit of life because you're always just so stuck in the professional side of things. Like you get paid to do this, so I need to do this and this and this. But that's actually where mental health comes in, is where you overdo it and you overwork yourself, that
Right.
you get to a point where you just get over it. Um, and I think for me, that's the key, is not to get to a point where yes, okay, I'm over watching, our training. It needs to be like, okay, let me watch training. Where can I improve as an individual? And things like that. And it's like I say, know when to put the rugby switch on and know when to put the rugby switch off. And for me, that's a really important balance to have in life. And especially from coming from the Olympics, is that I just switched off completely from rugby for at least the time that I had, but still stayed active. And then when I had to, to switch back on again, to know, okay, now I need to go into rugby mode again, need to get
Mhm.
my mind, start thinking of rugby, then, then you do it.
No, and one for the record, not stupid to be able to go from rugby to CrossFit. It actually makes the perfect amount of sense because it's now going like it's the same way I feel sometimes whenever I go from working on computer and you're doing your work to just going to do manual labor. Like you're it's
Yeah.
just something that just you turn your mind off to, but it's just the action of just doing something else that is progressive but not pressured.
Yeah.
I assume something to that effect.
Yes. No, that's definitely, you got a spot on there.
I feel like I'm with you. I'm with you. I got you.
Yes, you will be. You understand me a little bit.
you know, at, you know, kind of just want to get a couple more questions and just backtrack it though. You enter into the Olympics, right? 3 times you guys have tried to get there. Twice you almost did, but something always got in the way. Finances, issues with African Cup and suspension or whatever nonsense that goes on. But third time's the charm. And you guys were finally able to cross over. You get to Paris. For you, this is an achievement of a dream. What was the significant? How much did it mean? Not just even for you, but for the team to finally finally be able to get over the hump of getting to the Olympics.
Yeah, I think, you always watch the Olympics, and I mean, that's the highest you can achieve in any sporting career. And I think obviously, like, it was a lot of heartache, when the team qualified and we were just denied to go to the Olympics game. And last year when we qualified again and we were actually told you going to the Olympics. It's really difficult to describe it, but it brings so much joy to know that finally, that childhood dream comes true, and not only for yourself but for your teammates as well. And it's just a massive boost for the women's system, and for the growth of women's rugby in South Africa, because if you don't play on these world stages, you don't get that exposure. You don't get exposure for sponsorships. You don't get exposure of actually, young children, boys and girls, watching, um, and even seeing the other teams, ability to play women's rugby. So just as a team to be able to play at the Olympics, you get the exposure. People can see, like, I can, pursue a, a, a career in rugby as a woman. It's obviously still growing, but you will have the opportunity to do it one day. Um, and I think as a team, that's what it means to play at the Olympics. It's so much bigger than only yourself and the people that you represent, like your family. You really represent the people of South Africa, the people of your country, and you almost just put the women's game on a higher ranking than what it was before the Olympics.
You know, no, I think that's right, and I think that's facts. That's absolute facts. Let me ask
Yeah.
this: did the Olympics live up to what you expected it to be? Like from environment to competition to the what you felt like you saw on TV. Did it live up to it as a firsthand experience as Olympian, as the title Olympian?
Um, I must say, in terms of the village, that environment, there was excitement there, inside the village, that whole experience. But there's some things that France could do better when they have to host another Olympics again. There's always room for improvement, and you're not
You're so
always going to
kind.
keep everyone happy.
You're so kind of it.
um,
Just tell them, you guys sucked it up a little bit. All right, you guys need to do better with the housing. No,
Um, but yeah, like, and then the whole experience of, of the tournament
Yeah.
itself for the rugby. I think it was like I said, with the spectators coming out, especially with hosting the men and the women seven separately. You don't really expect that the European community, will come out and support Olympic women's rugby sport like that, and people really came out in their numbers. I mean, almost every sporting code stadium was packed out, and for me that was really a good experience to experience, and see the passion that those people have, for sports. I even remember with the World Cup last year, how the people came all over, from Europe, to come and support there, and stadiums was packed out. So, just experiencing that, as a woman, that's really, it's spectacular. We even went and watched our men's pool game from our men, and the crowd was crazy, and people were out there in the numbers, and just to experience that, as a player on the rugby field, like I said, it's spectacular. um, and the competition itself, it was really good. Playing in Stade de France. It's a massive stadium in France, Paris. Experiencing the opening ceremony. We couldn't experience the closing ceremony because we were already back home. But just experiencing that as an athlete, it's almost like it gives you goosebumps, when you're at the opening ceremony, because that's when you realize, when you see the Olympic rings, you're like, you did it, you achieved it. You can call yourself an Olympian, and it's really, it's a few people across the world, and even in South Africa, that can say, I'm an Olympian and I went to the Olympic Games and I represented my country on the biggest stage, that there was.
I love that. To kind of close it out, I want to ask, there's to 28-year-old Nadine, if she had a chance to talk with 12-year-old Nadine, um, you know, and what would be maybe two pieces of advice that you'd give to 12-year-old Nadine, now knowing where you are now?
I think definitely one thing that I will tell her is, when you have the opportunity, that crosses your path, really take the opportunity, to do something good for yourself. And when you chase success, don't leave the people, behind that wants to help you. Always remember that the direction you're going into, to excel in life, uh, take the people with you that's there to support you, help you to get you where you are, and never forget those people, because they are the reason that, looking in 10 years time, or 15 years time, that when you represent your country, or when you have that dream or goal in mind, is that those are the people, that will help you achieve it in their own way.
No, I love that. I love that. That both pieces of advice.
Yes.
Is that two? Yep. No, I love that.
Did you
I
see
know.
it as only one?
I mean, it really could work. It depends what's needed, but regardless of the fact, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Nadine, I want to thank you so much again for taking the time, but really want to give you your props for being able to be a part of rugby history, of South Africa rugby history, and continuing to be a part of the change for women's rugby. You need to understand, I don't know if you know it yet or you consider it yet, but you are considered as one of the legends of the game. And there is a generation of women who have had a chance now to be able to see you, who are going to come and make this women's team even more powerful enough to maybe make two sides and then let people be able to jump between sides either way. But it is because of you and your team and everybody that you've been able to, be able to be a front for. So I want to thank you for that and send my cheers over to you for those.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your kind words and your acknowledgement. For me as a person and as a player, that's for me that's really important. As a almost as an icon, someone that's really out there, is to really show that humbleness and kindness, because you are a person before you're a rugby player. Yeah, and to just to put it out there to show that women have the power to do anything in life. Yeah, and thank you that I was able, to be on this platform and create a platform for women to actually watch these um podcast and series that you do, that also shows the work that you put in for women in sport, and that really helps because that creates the exposure for them. So also thank you for that, and yeah, thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, it's dope. Look forward to doing it again because I want the update going into this next year at some point in time. So I
Yes.
appreciate you. Until next time.
Definitely.
Nadine, I am so honored that you took the time to be able to talk on this platform. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you so much for what you do in rugby and how you're impacting the country of South Africa and everything that they're doing with that sport. So I appreciate it. And thank you all for taking the time to pay attention, to listen, to just take in the story. Please, like I said before at the beginning, please, if you can, subscribe if you liked it, leave a comment and a like if you truly do appreciate it. Wherever it is that we're at, I'd love to be able to see your thoughts on this all together. And of course, you can always check back on some of our other stories in the past. We had Joanne Yap, who's the head coach for Australia women's national team, on the Wallaroos. At our last interview, we had Nyasha and Kumbi, part of ASTAT Gaming, who have been doing great things with daily fantasy sports. And we just have a slew of people from all walks of life, but really all people who make a direct impact with rugby in some way, shape, or form that is at a high level and that is really trying to shift the game in a way that we have never done in the past. And I truly appreciate it, or have done it as well. So in the meantime, look, I hope you guys are have a great weekend. I hope that you guys are happy. I hope that you guys are truly healthy. And I hope that you know that you are highly favored. Till next time, cheers.